What if I told you that the single most important tool for getting fluent in English isn't a massive grammar workbook?
Right. Or, a daily vocabulary app.
Yeah, or even some expensive trip to another country. What if the secret to making a real connection with a complete stranger is, well, just looking up at the sky and stating the
That
obvious?
sounds a bit backwards, doesn't it? I mean, we're
Yeah.
taught that mastering a language means using complex, sophisticated sentences.
Exactly. Like you need to be able to debate philosophy to be considered fluent.
But real, daily human interaction is vastly different. It operates on a much simpler level.
And that simple level is exactly what we are exploring today on this deep dive.
Yes, it is.
Our sources for today are drawn from a really interesting conversational English guide. It's focused entirely on seasons and the weather.
Which might sound a bit basic at first glance.
Right, if you're listening to this, you're probably already learning English, and you might be wondering, why does a basic weather guide matter to me?
But our mission today isn't just to teach you how to say, it is raining.
No, definitely not. Our mission is to uncover why weather is the ultimate conversational icebreaker.
We want to look at how really simple phrases actually build your language confidence.
Yeah, and what our casual weather preferences reveal about our daily lives. Okay, let's unpack this because the core philosophy of this guide is it's pretty wild.
It really is.
Right out of the gate, it tells you to completely abandon what it calls boring grammar.
Which is such a relief for so many learners. I mean, let's be honest.
Oh, totally. It says forget the textbooks, just focus on real, natural conversations about the stuff right in front of you.
Because focusing on perfect English is actually, it's a barrier to connecting with people.
Exactly. The guide argues that your only real goal should be confidence and consistency.
Which is a profound shift. When adults try to learn a language, they usually overthink it.
Oh, yeah. They want all the rules.
Right. They want the structural blueprint. They want to know the exact difference between past perfect and past continuous.
But think about how exhausting that is. Like, imagine you are standing next to a stranger waiting for a bus or an auto rickshaw.
Just a normal, everyday situation.
Right. And your brain is desperately trying to perfectly conjugate a verb before you even open your mouth.
You're totally trapped inside your own head.
You're paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake. You burn so much energy on the grammar that you completely miss the human being standing right next to you.
It's true. But I know a lot of learners might be thinking, wait, is it really possible to build fluency just by making small talk about sunshine?
Yeah, I have to push back a little on this abandoned grammar idea, too. Like, don't we need those heavy grammar books eventually?
Well, it's a fair point. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, how our brains actually build relationships, we start to see why starting with the weather is so crucial.
Okay. Make it make sense for me.
So, sure, just saying hot won't sustain a 2-hour dinner party.
Right.
But you're never going to get invited to that dinner party if you can't even say hello in the elevator.
Ah, that makes sense. The small talk is the gateway.
Exactly. The source isn't saying grammar is permanently useless. It's just saying grammar is the wrong starting line.
So where should we start?
Think about a child. A toddler doesn't learn complex grammar before they speak. They point at a dog and say dog.
Right, they point at the rain and say rain.
Yes. And they just want someone to agree with them. When a parent smiles and says, yes, rain, the child feels seen.
They get that little boost of confidence.
Exactly. That shared reality builds the confidence they need to try harder sentences later.
hmm
And the guide is applying that exact same idea to adult English learners.
Okay, wow. So talking about the weather is basically the adult version of pointing at a dog.
It really is.
It's a low-stakes shared reality. I mean, if you and I are waiting in line at the grocery store, I don't know anything about you.
Right. You don't know my politics or if I'm having a terrible day.
Exactly. These topics are risky. We might argue or misunderstand each other.
But the rain. We are both objectively getting wet. It's a mutual truth.
It's an undeniable fact. So by stating the obvious about the weather, you are basically extending a peace offering.
You're signaling, hey, I recognize you, I am experiencing the same thing as you, and I'm safe to talk to.
The anxiety of, what do I say, just vanishes because the topic is literally falling from the sky.
Right. You're just naming the space you both occupy.
So that brings us to how the guide actually teaches the vocabulary for this, because it doesn't just say, tell them it's raining.
No, it gets very specific about the types of everyday words you should use.
Let's look at the basic building blocks it gives us. The text highlights daily use phrases like, it's quite hot today.
Or, it's really cold today.
Yeah, it's a bit windy. Or, it's raining heavily.
Notice the pattern there. The guide doesn't teach you to just make flat robotic statements like, it is hot, or it is windy.
Right. It intentionally adds these little modifying words quite really a bit heavily.
In linguistics, those are called hedges or intensifiers, but basically, they are flavor words.
Flavor words, I like that. But on the surface, they kind of just seem like throwaway filler words, right? Like if I say it's hot versus it's quite hot, the actual temperature hasn't changed.
The facts haven't changed, sure, but the social function of the sentence has completely transformed.
How so?
Well, a robot looks at a thermometer and just says, it is hot. That's a closed statement.
It leaves no room for the other person to respond.
Exactly. But a human uses a modifier. Why? Because it adds a personal, subjective feeling to the facts.
Oh, I see. Stating it is hot is like handing someone a black and white sketch.
It invites the other person to swing back. Let's take the phrase, it's a bit windy.
Okay.
By saying a bit, you are intentionally softening your statement. You're giving the other person a gentle, non-threatening invitation to agree or disagree.
Right. Because if I say the wind is destructive, that's a really intense opinion.
Very intense. But if you say, it's a bit windy, isn't it? The other person has room to play.
They can say, just a bit. I almost lost my umbrella crossing the street.
Exactly. You've given them a platform to share their own little story. You've started the conversational dance.
It lowers the risk of getting rejected. If I hedge my bet with quite or a bit, I'm basically saying, hey, I'm open to your opinion too.
And this guide emphasizes that this kind of collaboration should happen all the time.
Oh yeah, it reminds the learner that these phrases are designed to be used everywhere, whether you're walking, cooking, relaxing, whatever.
You're supposed to integrate these simple, modified observations into your daily routine.
Until they just become second nature. You're wiring your brain to look for chances to serve that conversational tennis ball.
But of course, there is a limitation to just talking about the daily weather.
Right. Once we both agree that it's quite hot, the tennis match is kind of over.
Daily modifiers get you through a short elevator ride.
Yeah.
But they don't really build a deep friendship.
No, to build actual rapport, you have to move from what's happening right now to a shared cultural memory.
And that is exactly where the source material goes next.
It transitions from the daily weather to the 4 seasons.
Which is such a necessary step in making friends. We use the daily weather to prove we are friendly, but we use the seasons to prove we share a culture.
Let's look at how it breaks the seasons down because it attaches some really specific sensory details to each one.
It starts with summer.
Right. It describes summer as hot and sunny, but then it specifically notes that it is very hot in India.
And it immediately associates that intense heat with drinking cold drinks and the advice to stay indoors.
So right away, we are shifting from just general weather to a highly specific cultural experience.
Because temperature is relative, right? Hot in the UK is a totally different physical experience than very hot in India.
Oh, absolutely. And the instruction to stay indoors isn't just a casual suggestion. It shows how the weather actually dictates our daily lives.
The weather stops being just the background and becomes an active force.
Then the guide moves to winter. It uses words like cold, chilly, cool, and comfortable.
Notice that word, comfortable.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It frames the cold not as a bad thing, but as a cozy relief. And it associates winter with enjoying hot tea and warm clothes.
Oh, I love that. When you read hot tea, you immediately get this visceral sensation.
You're not just memorizing the word winter. You're recalling the physical warmth of holding a cup of tea in your hands.
You're attaching the English language to a deep sensory memory.
And nothing demonstrates the power of sensory memory better than the guide section on the monsoon.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting. This is my favorite part.
It's brilliant.
It describes the monsoon as rainy weather, but it leans heavily on that specific smell of the first rain.
Petrichor.
Right, but the guide specifically highlights the fresh smell of midi.
Midi, the wet earth.
And it intentionally leaves the word midi, which is Hindi for soil or earth, untranslated, right in the middle of the English text.
What's fascinating here is how that single word choice proves that sometimes pure translation just isn't enough.
Right. Wet dirt in English just doesn't have the same emotional impact as midi.
Not at all. Using that cultural touchstone shows that some feelings are tied to nostalgia.
Because sensory memory totally bypasses the analytical, grammar-obsessed part of the brain.
Exactly. When you invoke the smell of rain hitting dry earth after a brutally hot summer, you aren't just teaching a vocabulary word.
You are activating a massive collective cultural sigh of relief.
You're tapping into a shared emotional reservoir.
It proves that true fluency isn't just about swapping a word in your native language for an English one.
No, it's about translating cultural experiences into a conversation.
When someone brings up the smell of MIDI, the conversation immediately gets deep. You aren't just talking about water falling from the sky anymore.
You're talking about childhood memories of playing in the rain.
You're talking about relief for the farmers. You are talking about life.
Exactly. You are recognizing how deeply connected we are to our environment.
The guide also mentions spring, describing it simply as pleasant and fresh.
Which is nice. It acts as a gentle palate cleanser after the intense sensory details of the other seasons.
But the big takeaway from this section is that we don't just observe the weather out the window, we react to it.
We adapt our behaviors, we drink cold drinks, we put on warm clothes.
And recognizing that participation is what sets up the next crucial phase of the guide.
Because the next step in having a real conversation is moving from objective facts to subjective opinions.
Yes, moving from the what to the why.
This is where small talk evolves into actual relationship building.
The guide introduces conversational preferences. It teaches sentences like, my favorite season is winter because I like cold weather.
Or, my favorite season is monsoon.
Up until now, the stakes have been zero. It's quite hot today. Yes, it is.
Very safe.
But asking someone, which is your favorite season, and following up with why, that immediately deepens the chat.
Because it forces a personal narrative into the open.
Let's look at the mechanics of this, specifically the word because.
Right. When you say, my favorite season is winter because the weather's cool, you are doing a micro-disclosure.
A micro-disclosure, explain that a bit.
You are voluntarily opening up about your personal comfort levels, your habits, and your personality.
It's a tiny window into your brain.
It really is. Think about it. If someone tells you their favorite season is the monsoon because they love the dramatic thunderstorms.
You instantly assume they might be a bit of a romantic.
Right. Or that they appreciate nature and unpredictability.
And if someone says they love the blistering heat of summer because they love being active outdoors.
You picture them as energetic, maybe very extroverted.
So the weather is really just a Trojan horse for revealing who you are.
Precisely. You are no longer discussing meteorology. You are discussing identity.
And the guide provides some really useful, simple phrases to bridge this gap so it feels natural.
Phrases like, the weather is nice today, or I love this weather.
I want to look at that one. I love this weather.
It's a surprisingly strong emotional statement, isn't it?
It is, masquerading as casual small talk. By saying, I love, you are claiming the environment. You're saying this external thing is bringing you joy.
And even a seemingly boring phrase like, it looks like it will rain, does a lot of social work.
How so?
Well, it's not just an amateur weather forecast, it's a shared anticipation.
I see.
If you and I are facing each other and I say, it looks like it will rain, I am essentially inviting you to look up at the sky with me.
We're both looking at the same clouds.
Exactly. We are standing shoulder to shoulder now. It creates a momentary alliance.
A momentary alliance. That is such a cool way to phrase it. We become a team, bracing for the exact same future.
And historically, the weather has been perfect for that alliance because it's always been reliable.
Right. We knew summer would be hot. We knew winter would be cold.
Small talk relies entirely on that predictable baseline.
But this is where the source material takes a really fascinating turn.
Yes, the then versus now segment.
It was incredibly unexpected and, frankly, a bit sobering to read in a basic English guide.
The guide introduces a very modern twist. The reality that the weather baseline is shifting.
It explicitly teaches phrases that acknowledge environmental changes.
Moving away from stable seasons into a vocabulary of disruption.
Listen to the phrases it highlights. They are stark. Summers are hotter now.
The weather is getting warmer every year.
Rain comes unexpectedly. And the biggest one, the weather is unpredictable.
This raises an important question. If our most basic method of connecting relies on predictable patterns, what happens to our language when the environment stops behaving?
It radically changes the tone of the conversation.
It really does.
We've always relied on the weather to be our safe space, right? The topic we retreat to when we want to avoid heavy stuff.
But suddenly, saying summers are hotter now isn't just a benign observation.
No, it's a commentary on a global crisis. It edges away from small talk and bleeds into something much heavier.
Something laced with collective anxiety.
What I found brilliant about the guide here is its absolute pragmatism.
Yes. It doesn't get political.
Exactly. It doesn't dive into debates about climate change or teach the science of greenhouse gases.
It just gives the learner the everyday vocabulary for the lived reality on the ground.
And the reality is that the shared baseline has moved. You just can't ignore the fact that the weather has become erratic.
If you are making a guide for natural daily English today, you have to include it.
You can't just give someone a flashcard that says summer is hot and tell them they are fluent.
Because everyone at that bus stop is secretly thinking, summer is terrifyingly hot now and I'm worried.
Right. If you ignore the unpredictability, your language lesson is functionally obsolete.
And teaching the phrase, the weather is unpredictable, is profoundly significant.
Because it changes how we bond.
Exactly. Historically, we bonded over confirming an expectation.
Yeah.
I say it's cold, you say yes, it's winter. We both feel secure.
The world makes sense.
But now the guide is teaching learners that connection is often based on shared vulnerability.
So instead of bonding over the world making sense, we are now bonding over the fact that the world feels totally off-kilter.
Yes, we are confirming a shared disorientation.
Like when a Tuesday in December is inexplicably hot.
Or when a massive rainstorm floods a city that never gets rain.
That shared shock creates a really potent moment for connection. You turn to someone and say, "Can you believe how hot it is right now? This isn't normal."
You are validating each other's unease. In an unpredictable world, finding a stranger who confirms that they see the weirdness too provides huge comfort.
It's a way of saying, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing? I'm not crazy," right?
Exactly. We are experiencing this anomaly together.
And that actually makes those simple conversational modifiers we talked about earlier quite really a bit even more vital.
Because when the environment is throwing extreme curveballs, serving that conversational tennis ball anchors us.
It highlights the ultimate function of human language. Language wasn't invented to be grammatically flawless.
No, it wasn't invented so we can pass written syntax exams.
It evolved as a survival mechanism.
A way to assure ourselves that we are part of a group, that we are safe, and that we aren't alone.
Looking back at the journey we've taken today, it's genuinely remarkable how much depth is hidden in a beginner's English guide.
It really is. We started by exploring how the undeniable reality of weather serves as the perfect, low-pressure gateway to connection.
Completely bypassing the paralyzing stress of perfect grammar.
We examined the hidden mechanics of basic vocabulary, how quite and a bit transform robotic statements into flexible social buffers.
We looked at the profound power of sensory memory, how cultural details like the smell of MIDI tap into collective nostalgia.
And we discussed how moving from objective facts to subjective seasonal preferences acts as a micro-disclosure.
Revealing the intricacies of who we are. And finally, we grappled with the modern reality of a shifting climate.
Seeing how unpredictable weather is fundamentally altering the nature of our small talk.
Forcing us to bond over shared vulnerability instead of shared expectations.
The core philosophy of this guide really holds up, and it's an empowering message for learners.
It is. You don't need perfect grammar to connect with another human being.
You don't need a massive vocabulary to be seen and understood.
You just need simple observations, a willingness to be a little vulnerable, and the consistency to keep trying.
The sky above you is always going to be the most accessible bridge to the person next to you.
It's a shared canvas, completely free, always there. You just have to look up, point, and offer an invitation to talk.
But as we wrap up, there is a final, somewhat provocative thought to ponder.
Oh, yes. I've been thinking about this. As our global climate continues to shift,
And the weather becomes increasingly unpredictable.
as summers continue to break heat records year after year, will there come a point where talking about the weather officially ceases to be casual small talk?
That's a serious question.
Will the shared canvas above us eventually become the most serious, high-stakes, and consequential conversation we can possibly have with a stranger?
Something to think about next time you check the forecast.
Keep an eye on the sky, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.